Welcome to this week's edition of World Crisis Radio. This is Webster Tarpley reporting from Washington, D.C. Our theme, from Sarajevo to Torres, Sarajevo to the MH17 Malaysian airliner, from Sarajevo to Donetsk, Lugansk, the parallels and the dangers, right? This is the method of historical analysis recommended by Confucius in the Analects, by Machiavelli, and by others. I hesitate to put Arnold Toynbee with these two great people that I've just cited, but he also recommended it, right? Have one eye on the past, maybe on classical civilization or some relevant past, and one eye on the present, and you can understand so much more. And it's not a matter of analogies, it's simply a matter of heurism, right? Things that get you to think and have better understanding. So, on the one hand, we're in the midst of this wholly artificial crisis around the Malaysian airliner, with lunatic attempts to exploit this, and in particular the attempt to transform the funeral of these poor victims of power politics and geopolitics, to try to transform them into the symbols of a new European war. That was especially strong on CNN this week, the funeral coverage by Wolf Blitzer, but in particular by the former CIA asset Anderson Cooper and the lunatic propagandist Richard Quest. Both of them got the Goebbels Prize, but the competition for the Goebbels Prize is extremely intense this week, this month, as is indeed the competition for the Ribbentrop Prize. Although Kerry seems to be in the lead, Fabius is trying to overtake him, and we have other contenders as well. There is therefore an attempt to turn this event into the signal, not just for a new Cold War, but for a confrontation. And we have to remember, the general thought mechanism of the average person is, oh, those neocons, or whatever they are, those Samantha Power humanitarian bombers, they may be crazy, but certainly they can't want nuclear war. You have to remember that for those people, there is always this mechanism, which is that if you go to a confrontation and you go to the brink, as John Foster Dulles always put it, or Nixon, right? If you show that you're crazy enough, then the other side will back down. That's always built into their calculation, that the relatively more rational, less hysterical leadership of somebody like Putin is likely to back down. This is a calculation of supreme folly, incalculable folly. And that is where we now find ourselves. And, of course, all of this occurring at the 100th anniversary now of the outbreak of World War I. We're recording on the afternoon of July 25th, 2014, and we're headed now towards the first declaration of war, which occurred on the 28th of July. This was Count Berchtold and Konrad von Hötzendorf, the Austrian military leader, declaring war on Serbia. This is what started the entire thing, the first declaration of war. Although, at just about the same time, Sir Winston Churchill had decided to send the British fleet through the English Channel. On the afternoon of July 28th, 1914, Winston Churchill ordered the fleet to proceed during the night at high speed with no lights from Portsmouth, where they'd been having the review, the Naval Review, Fleet Week, whatever you want to call it, through the Straits of Dover to the wartime base at Scapa Flow, north of Scotland. And on July 29th, the official warning telegram was sent out from the Admiralty. So therefore, we had Serbia mobilizing on July 25th, today, 100 years ago, and then Great Britain mobilizing the fleet on the 28th, followed then by Russia, Austria, France, and Germany all mobilizing. And this question of mobilization, of course, mobilization in those days was war. That was the only way to understand it, especially if it was the Russian mobilization upon which everything else depended. Mobilization was a war. No way around it. So we're going through these anniversaries right now. We'll get back to this in a minute. But then, of course, Ukraine. Now let's focus on Ukraine. We're 8 days since the downing of this Malaysian Airlines plane. The hypotheses are many. I'm not going to try to do a detailed technical analysis, because what I'm more concerned with is the political consequence. In other words, what should be done? What's the answer? Not information, but policies are the key thing. Well, what was this? Was this a surface-to-air missile battery of the BUK type, the BUK, or some other kind, right? A SAM-11 or whatever it is, from the Ukrainian army, right? You got to remember, all of these systems, especially the older ones, are held in common by the Russian forces, the Ukrainian forces, and indeed others in the area, notably Georgia, right? They have similar kinds of weapons. So it could very easily be a BUK of the Ukraine military itself. It could also be the aviation answer, right? It could be that Ukraine fighters were around, 2, 1, different reports, and therefore that would have to be explored, right? One thing I can say is that taking the black box to London obviously guarantees us that there will be no reliable or impartial reading of this, because of Perfide Albion and their sad history. The one thing I guess we do know, and this is at least the view of the U.S. intelligence community, let's see if we can find this, that the U.S. intelligence community, and this is an Associated Press dispatch of July 22nd, no evidence of direct Russian link to plane. Senior U.S. intelligence officials say they have no evidence of direct Russian government involvement in the shooting down of Malaysian Airlines Flight 17. That was as of Tuesday. It remains the same. All the stuff from Kerry and others is baloney. And we'll be back in a minute on World Crisis Radio. Welcome back to World Crisis Radio. And this is once again the 25th of July, the day that Serbia, first country to mobilize. They actually gave the order to mobilize at the same moment that they sent their answer to the Austro-Hungarian ultimatum of 2 days earlier. This all happened within the same period of a couple of hours. Anyway, the Tuesday press conference was off the record. Senior U.S. intelligence officials. Who could that be? Could that be Brennan? We don't know. The officials briefed reporters Tuesday under ground rules that their names not be used in discussing intelligence related to last week's air disaster. They don't know if Russians were present. They wouldn't say that the crew was trained in Russia. There are some other quotes from this saying, we don't have a name, we don't have a rank, we don't have a serial number, we don't have a nationality. They know, in effect, nothing. So all of that garbage from Kerry about proof, hard evidence, there is none. So that also indicates what we've been told, right, that there was a faction of the CIA that was not interested in this confrontation and that was advancing other theories. If you look at my Twitter feed from a week ago or more, you'll see, or from a week ago, you'll see that indeed there was a CIA opposition group that was somehow being heard, at least indirectly, through the press. All right, so that's that's going on. Now, the interesting thing, how was this done? You'll remember 9/11 synthetic terror made in USA, right? The stress on drills, exercises as the means to mobilize government resources for something that can only be done using government resources. And that's done by taking a drill that is already in existence and it's probably legal and sanctioned and whatever else, but then turns out to be redirected, right? It gets, in effect, changed, right? It goes live. It becomes the ultimate in verisimilitude and realism, that is to say, the real thing. So, lo and behold, here now we have NATO's exercise breeze. Now, normally this is sea breeze, and we've had this in previous years, and you may remember some years back, during the height of the Iraq War, as I recall it, there were a couple of NATO warships that were supposed to dock in Odessa, as I recall, or some other Ukrainian Black Sea port, and there was a large public demonstration to get those NATO warships out of there. And we reported it on this broadcast. And that was Sea Breeze 2007 or 2008 or whatever it was. This time, it's down to Breeze 2014. So what is this? It is a naval exercise in the Black Sea. The largest or most significant warship we know of is an Aegis cruiser. The U.S. Aegis cruisers, these are the ones with those phased array radars, right? That's the big feature of the ship that you see, the phased array radar built into the superstructure. And in this case, it's the USS Vela Gulf. So the Vela Gulf was in the Black Sea during this time. Now, there's an attempt to argue that the Vela Gulf had departed through the Straits. It had gone through the Bosporus and the Dardanelles, according to some reports. This seems to be a cover-up. The U.S. method is this. According to the Treaty of Montreux, which governs this very, very sensitive, one of the most sensitive points on the world in the world, maritime situation, the Straits, Turkey. If you're a country that does not have a coast on the Black Sea, if you're a non-littoral nation, your ships are supposed to stay there. Warships are supposed to stay 21 days at most. Now, the U.S. gets around this by manufacturing mechanical difficulties. They say, our engine broke down, we got to stay another week, or our engine broke down, we've got to dock here in Romania and get some repairs. You get the idea. So that seems to be one of the ways that they kept the Vela Gulf there. And you'll remember the Truxtun and some other of these ships. There were also forces from Bulgaria, Turkey, United Kingdom, Greece, Spain, Italy, France, United States, others. And this features AWACS, right? Electronic surveillance planes of various sizes, but including AWACS. And those would have been observing everything going on in this area of Torres, right? Torres, of course, Maurice Torres, the head of the French Communist Party, died 50 years ago. I think this month. Ironic that this would happen there, but then he got a city named after him in the then Soviet Union, and that name has stuck. So that's Torres. That's the largest town of any size near the crash site. So, Breeze 2014, and we need answers, of course. We want to know to what degree Breeze 2014 followed this. We want to subpoena the tapes. We want to see the electronic surveillance carried out by the Aegis cruiser Vela Gulf, who can easily see all this stuff, and the AWACS planes and other smaller electronic surveillance aircraft that were flying all over the place precisely during this time. There's another interesting issue that we remember last week we talked about Carlos, the Spanish air traffic controller, and his story is still being verified, but the one thing that seems to be the case is the air traffic controller tapes from the Kiev airport are missing. So this would have been one of the main sources for enlightenment about what happened to this aircraft, and they're gone. Reminds me of certain things that happened around 9/11, right? The methodology remains the same. So again, you want to learn the methodology. 9/11 Synthetic Terror, Made in USA, the 5th edition, where we're up to 45, 46 drills, exercises used to carry out that one. Now, Air Algeria. I think this is also quite interesting, tragic, but interesting. So in northern Mali, now, as soon as you get into this area, you got to think Libya, right? This vast desert, this ocean of sand is now the playground for these terrorist groups. And where would they get such weaponry? Why, obviously, from the arsenals of the late Colonel Muammar Gaddafi, the Libyan government, which these imperialist meddlers and butchers were so eager to overthrow. Bernard-Henri Lévy, we're hearing from Bernard-Henri Lévy. He's back, saying that what NATO, what Europe is doing is a monstrosity. Of course, they've got to attack Putin. Putin's crime, Europe's cowardice, says Bernard-Henri Lévy, 22nd of July, 2014. How can this person show his face? He's the one who convinced Sarkozy to begin the bombing of Libya back in March of 2011 with this Benghazi story. So now, the contents of all of those Gaddafi arsenals, now generalized all over Nigeria, Boko Haram, they have them all over, Central African Republic, you name it, it's all over the place. So therefore, I would say the most likely hypothesis is that those surface-to-air missiles taken from Gaddafi's arsenal was let loose on this Air Algerie. The French government is saying that this was because of the weather. This is ridiculous. How many times have we been in aircraft where the pilot says, oh, by the way, folks, we have some big thunderstorms ahead of us. They go way, way up. We can't go over them. We're going to go around them, and they fly around them, and that's that. So this French explanation makes no sense. Fabius and company are probably ashamed of themselves, if they have any shame, for destroying Libya and making all this possible. Back in a minute. Welcome back to World Crisis Radio. Webster Tarpley in Washington. Now, the one other thing that would have to be said about Ukraine, there is a political faction which has shown itself to be bloodthirsty in the extreme, absolutely ruthless, and somewhat centralized, with significant stocks of relatively modern military equipment. If we go back to the beginning of May, I believe, we will find the massacre at one of the government buildings in Odessa, where anti-fascist elements were trapped in this building, and a fire was set, but the building was big and old and stone, and the fire was not what killed these people. It was rather death squads that went through the building. These were pro-Kiev, pro-fascist death squads who then killed large numbers of people, 50, 60, 100, we don't know, naturally, in the complete indifference and cold disregard of the controlled prostitutes here of the West. But the guy behind that is Kolomoyskyi. He is, among other things, the local boss of Dnepropetrovsk, I believe. He is a fantastically rich oligarch, and this Kolomoyskyi, with his hands dripping with blood from the Odessa massacre, has assembled something called the Dnieper Battalion. The Dnieper Battalion of Kolomoyskyi. And these characters apparently do have these surface-to-air missiles. Maybe Buk, maybe Sam-11. These may be the same. They may be different. They may be a mixture. Whatever it is, Kolomoyskyi looks like a good suspect for this stuff. Now, of course, when we look at all this stuff, we got to think back to Sarajevo, right? 28th of June, 1914, the thing that blew the lid off the world, although not immediately, only after a month. And you'll also remember, as I tried to stress, it's not Sarajevo per se that gets you to World War I. It's the investigation and the Austrian ultimatum concerning the form that investigation will take. So we have to think about the obvious parallels, and I've tried to cite some of the material about this, and I now have gotten my hands on one of these pieces. You'll remember Charles Henry Norman of the British Independent Labour Party wrote about his experiences on the 28th of June, 1914 in downtown London, when various bigwigs came to him and said, have you got any news from Sarajevo? Answer, what's Sarajevo? And then the guy goes off raving, I hope they didn't screw it up, I hope they didn't blow it. And then later a well-connected lady says, what they're saying at the newspapers is that this is the signal for the big European war, which a lot of people didn't think, right? The Austro-Hungarian royal house, just to speak for them, said, why should this have any political consequences, right? We have anarchists killing people all the time. Of course, it was more complicated than that, but you get the idea, right? To know right away that that's the signal for the big European war indicates a degree of insider knowledge. That was not at all obvious in retrospect. So this interesting essay by Charles Henry Norman called Grand Orient. This is in German only so far. We hope to do something about this, but Grand Orient, Incidents on Sunday, the 28th of June, 1914, in London by C.H. Norman. And this is published in an interesting publication. This is called Berliner Monatshefte für internationale Aufklärung. And that's Berlin monthly issues, right? Monthly notebooks, monthly volumes for international enlightenment. And this is essentially a publication set up by the German government to try to refute the war guilt clause of the Versailles Treaty. So in here we have this entire story, right, that this was awaited. Now, in other sources that I've found now, we also find that there was, in the Austrian press in Vienna, during the war, now this may, you could say this is war propaganda, I don't know, but it's interesting that the Vienna Neue Presse, the Neue Presse of Vienna, talks about the Russian ambassador in Belgrade, right, in Serbia, and he says that in St. Petersburg, the Russians were waiting for the news of the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand several days before it happened. So this is from the Vienna Neue Freie Presse, New Free Press, 4th of August, 1916. So not only in London were they waiting, but apparently also in St. Petersburg and Paris. I don't know, but it may well be. So you get the idea, right? These were not sociological phenomena. They were coordinated. So this is now the situation. When we talk about Kolomoyskyi, just to get back to him for a second, Kolomoyskyi comes on the scene, Ukrainian scene nationally, as an ally of Yulia Tymoshenko, the kleptocratic gas princess that we've talked about, right? NATO asset. It's also interesting that Kolomoyskyi seems to be the contact man for Hunter Biden. Hunter Biden, of course, the son, one of the sons of Joe Biden, our vice president, and that Kolomoyskyi also has the contacts, or has contacts, to Saakashvili, the tin pot fascist of Georgia. So Kolomoyskyi, this is now an interesting sociological study. I urge sociologists to get to work for a change. And in this case, Kolomoyskyi as a warlord, right? This is now a warlord of the 21st century with this, large dimension of international connections and God knows what. The other thing you should know about what's going on in Ukraine, on the one hand, the Yatsenyuk government has fallen, at least in theory, because Yatsenyuk will stay on as a caretaker. He's not going to quit. He's going to go on until parliamentary elections, which I believe are supposed to be held in October. Now, this has to do with various kinds of money, and what Yatsenyuk seems to want is he wants to privatize the gas pipeline network, and we know that one of the IMF conditions, maybe not stated, but maybe secret, right, maybe under the table, is that the IMF wants the Ukrainian gas pipeline system given to Chevron for nothing, right, simply granted to them for $1 or whatever it is. That seems to have been one of the issues. The other thing that the wonderful Ukrainian Rada is doing is to expel the Communist Party. Now, this means a party which has, I believe, about 8 or 10% of the votes is going to be thrown out if they get their way. You'll remember that Turchinov had been talking about this before in one of his outbursts, but now it looks like it's going to go through. When was the last time that a Communist Party was thrown out of a European Parliament and its parliamentary representation gotten rid of? Of course, you can go back to Germany in the 1950s when the KPD was banned, but they didn't really have anybody in Parliament. How about the first months, February, March 1933, Hitler, of course, expelled the KPD communists from the Reichstag, and they were, the second largest faction, the third largest faction. They had lots and lots of parliamentary representation. And you remember that happened before the enabling law was voted on that allowed Hitler to consolidate his dictatorship. So that's the wonderful democratic paradise of Yatsenyuk in Kiev. And we wonder how Nuland feels about this, that her protege has been bounced out. Maybe, of course, he's only, this is simply a pro forma resignation that he'll stay in power. Back in a minute.